Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to the final part of my end of season team roundup, waffles, whatever you want to call them series. And of course, today it's all about Red Bull and Mercedes. Now, before I get into it, just a reminder that these are not reviews or anything like that, just to look at some stats and a few of my thoughts on how I think each team and driver got on in 2021. And if you missed the previous three parts, I will pop a link in this video and at the end of this video for those who would like to catch up. I'm going to carry on, as is always the case, in reverse Constructors' Championship order, but I'll do these slightly differently to the other ones and talk about Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton a little bit later, because it kind of feels fitting to end with the championship contending too. So I'll go over the teams, Perez, Bottas, and then Hamilton and Verstappen. Let's start with Red Bull then, and I don't think many were expecting them to have quite the year they've had. Sure, things did look good after pre-season testing, but given the years of Mercedes dominance and some of the, let's say, sandbagging we've seen from them in testing in the past, I fully expected, I honestly believed it would be another case of Red Bull having to settle for a comfortable P2 in the standings again, and never quite having enough to challenge for either title. As it turned out, though, that was not the case, as I'm sure you know. They took full advantage of the tweaked 2021 regulations and built a car that for large parts of the season was arguably the best out there, at least I would say around about half of it, certainly in the hands of Max Verstappen. And once Sergio Perez had got up to speed, they ended up with a genuine shot at taking both titles, but in the Constructors, they didn't really have enough to overcome the consistency of both of the Mercedes drivers, but what an effort all the same. And you know, there was actually a point, I think it was after Mexico, where I believed they were on for both titles. That said, as much as I'm sure they'd love to have won both titles at the end of the season, taking that Constructors, I don't think they're going to be all that fussed. After all, Christian Horner said that the driver's title is the one that holds the most prestige, and based on some of the decisions taken during the season, sacrificing Checo to take the fastest lap in Silverstone, for example, it was the driver's title they wanted, and that is what they got. Now, Sergio Perez is an interesting one for me because I don't think he's had a bad first season with the team. Yeah, he was eclipsed by his teammate, but surely that was obvious before the season even started. That was always going to happen. And he did suffer with inconsistent pace, particularly at the start of the season. But as he settled in at the team, and especially once he was allowed to have a bit more control, if you like, on which way he wanted to get his car set up, mostly in the second half of the season, he made a big step forward. I mean, look, he was on the podium for 3 races in a row between Turkey and Mexico, and that was followed by 2 fourth-place finishes. And his first half of the season wasn't that bad really at all. It wasn't awful by any means. He won in Baku, yes, because his teammate's tyre blew up, but he'd done a great job to that point fending off Lewis Hamilton, the job he's expected to do as a second driver, of course. And in 8 of the opening 10 races, he only failed to make the top 6 once. Okay, with that car, I totally get why people expected and wanted more from him, but given it was his first season with the team and how much we've seen other drivers struggle in the past in that second car, I don't think it was an awful start. Not great, and plenty of room for improvement, which did come, but not the disaster that some people like to try and paint it as. And just for the record as well, I think the Perez-Verstappen combination has been really good. It's a balanced one for Red Bull, and I think it seems pretty harmonious too. So I'm glad that he's got another year with them, and I hope he can continue to improve and hang on to that seat a little bit longer. Don't get me wrong, there can be no excuses in 2022. He's an experienced guy. He's got a year under his belt with the team, and for the most part, it will be more of a level playing field. I'm confident he will do well, though. As I say, I'll get to Verstappen shortly, but as for Mercedes, I find it really tough to sum up their season. Like I said when talking about Red Bull, I fully expected them to be the favourites and end up maybe not cruising to the title, but certainly taking both titles again. However, for the first time in a long time, they were properly challenged and pushed to their limits. We even saw errors creeping in that we'd never really seen before. Errors with things like strategy, and probably because they were being pushed hard, reliability problems crept in as well. But to their credit, they kept pushing, they kept fighting, and ultimately ended up snatching an unprecedented 8th Constructors title. Absolutely incredible. There was a lot of frustration, anger, and in Toto Wolff's own words, people were disillusioned with what happened in Abu Dhabi, and there was a short period of silence from the team. But despite what happened in the final few laps of that race, that should not take away from what they achieved in 2021, and the team should still be immensely proud of what they have achieved in 2021, but also what they've achieved over the last few years. A lot of hard work from a lot of hardworking people went into winning those titles, arguably even more so in 2021, and so they deserve all the plaudits for doing that. In terms of the drivers, I feel like Valtteri Bottas' season was a real mixed bag of a final season with the team. He's had good runs of form, bad runs of form. He's endured bad luck as well. I mean, look at Monaco, for example, where it took about 2 days to change his tyre. And he even had to take more power unit penalties than most of those around him. But overall, if I'm being completely honest, I've been a little bit, I guess, disappointed with him. It does feel odd saying that, I'll admit that, because I don't think he's had an awful year. 4 pole positions, only 1 away from matching his teammate. He got 11 podiums, got a win thanks to that brilliant drive in Turkey, and picked up 226 points for P3 in the standings. It was solid. I think it's just that I didn't feel like he was on top of his game, not as consistent as he can be. I'm not saying he's been bad by any means at all, just not amazing, or I guess not at his best. Of course, it's always going to be tough going up against Lewis Hamilton, but with Max Verstappen on form as well, P3 in the standings was probably about the maximum he could achieve this year, and to be fair, he did do that. I'm trying to explain this the best I can, but I just look at performances like Imola before the crash and Baku where he just wasn't anywhere near on the pace. Throw in Abu Dhabi as well if you like, and he doesn't get the excuse of it's his first season with the team like Perez does. He's been at Mercedes since 2017. I'm not going in on him. I've got to make that clear. Not at all. And it has to be remembered that in this tight season, his points have made the difference. And so he's once again done his job and helped the team secure the Constructors' title, something he can be very proud of. And you know, maybe he was just the inevitable victim, I guess, of what happens when Hamilton and Verstappen are on their A-game. If it was another season of Mercedes domination, he would probably have been a clear P2 in the standings again. But again, he did do the job he's always been expected to do and help the team win that Constructors' title. Got to be said as well about both Perez and Bottas. They did a great job supporting their teammates at times in the title fight in 2021. And as an example, look at what Checo did in Abu Dhabi to help Verstappen. And maybe that's something we didn't see enough of from Bottas in 21. On the other side of the garage, it was a hard-fought season, wasn't it, from Lewis Hamilton, who I really feel, along with Verstappen, was on another level in 2021. He really had to step it up and raise his game in the title fight, and absolutely did that. And I have to say, something that doesn't get mentioned enough is how well he did to take that battle right down to the finale, given how far off he seemed to be following the race in Mexico. Sure, 19 points isn't a huge gap when you can grab up to 26 points for most weekends, even with just 4 races to go. But it did feel as though it was done, but 3 wins in a row, including that incredible fight back in Brazil, pulled him right back into play. And with just a few laps to go in Abu Dhabi, looked on for an 8th world title. Say what you want, but that race was all but won. Let's be real here. There were controversial moments along the way, but that is true of both drivers, and it is inevitable that flashpoints will occur in fights between 2 incredible drivers who will not want to give an inch in their pursuit of the title. Frankly, I'd have been more shocked if they hadn't come together in 2021. Point is, it was always going to happen. Now, I'm not a fanboy of either driver, and I don't have any dislike for either driver either, but that's a lot of either's anyway, but I thoroughly enjoyed seeing Lewis having to fight with a driver from another team because it reminded me of just what he can do when he is pushed hard. I'm not saying that he hasn't been in the past, but with all due respect to everyone involved, there is a huge difference between his, let's be generous and say, fights with Bottas over the last couple of years and the battle he faced in 2021 and 2016 for that matter. He really did have to step it up another level, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And you know, maybe I'm in a minority here, but I think even though he didn't receive the title in the end, that was one of his best seasons in F1. Maybe that sounds weird because he didn't get the title, I don't know. And I'm not necessarily talking about the numbers, although they were strong again, but just in the way he drove for the most part, the physical and mental pressure both drivers were under, the fact he and Verstappen had to give everything and managed to give everything just makes it feel like such an impressive season. It was just incredible and right up there as one of his best for me. I really hope that the rumours of retirement aren't true because I want to see him back and battling hard once again in 2022. I want round 2 of all this. And for the record, I fully expect him to return. I'd be completely shocked if he didn't. And last but by no means least, it is Max Verstappen, the 2021 F1 World Champion. A line, as I've said a couple of times already in this video, I did not expect to come at the end of this year. What a season he had. To be fair, much of what I said about Hamilton applies to Max as well. We saw him move to another level in 2021 to take on Lewis, something he had to do, and he put in some truly fantastic drives and some great runs as well. In fact, prior to Silverstone, he looked on for the title already, and many felt he was starting to run away with it. Don't forget, he'd just come off the back of 3 wins and was 32 points clear of Hamilton in the standings. Such a strong start to the year. Obviously, we know what happened at Silverstone and indeed Hungary and indeed Monza and keep going. But I'm not going to repeat what I said about those flashpoints earlier. I will reiterate, though, that whoever you support or whoever you blame, they were always going to come to blows in 2021. I must say, though, there were moments where I wondered if the pressure was starting to get to Max a little bit. Just looking at some of his driving in Jeddah, for example, I felt as though maybe that was going to be what gave Hamilton the edge in the end. The fact he'd been there before and Max hadn't, if you know what I mean. Anyway, I just said he had a strong start to the year, but his whole season was strong. Hungary aside, he finished either first or second at every single race he, finished, for a total of 18 podiums, which includes 10 wins and even took 10 poles as well. That is title-winning stuff and why he absolutely deserved it if you look at the season as a whole. But to be fair, and I think a lot of people make this point, that could be argued for both drivers. And yet, we know he was fortunate with the decisions taken in Abu Dhabi, but his team made the right call on tyres, and when the opportunity was handed to him, he took it. Do not blame him for taking that chance. Instead, question and blame how that chance was presented to him. More on that briefly in a moment. But he did nothing wrong at all in that moment, and any driver would have done exactly the same. And do you know what? To be completely honest, you are kidding yourself if you think otherwise. They are racing drivers. Anyway, I've been super impressed with Verstappen in recent seasons, specifically since the back end of 2018 actually, but certainly the way he stepped up in 2021. Not to put a downer on it, in fact, I think this is actually a positive thing to say. There is still room for growth, there's room for improvement, and for him to reach his full potential. I do not feel as though we've seen the best of him yet, and given how hard he fought and how well he drove for the most part in 2021, that is saying something. Now, I could sit here and waffle away for an hour and throw out a load more cliches, but I have to just address the elephant in the room. I'm not going to say too much on what happened in Abu Dhabi because we were live for 4 hours after the race discussing it, and we will be going live, or depending on when this goes out, we may well have already been live at the start of January to discuss it further. All I'll be doing is repeating myself, and I don't really want to do that. What I will say, though, is that what happened must never be allowed to happen again. And just again, to cover off the inevitable few who will only hear what they want to hear, I'd be saying the same if it was the other way around, or if it had been between, I don't know, Leclerc and Vettel, whoever. To say it was a controversial end to the year, or that it left a mark on what was an incredible season, one of the best, by the way, I've ever seen, that would be an understatement. The FIA will investigate it, and that needs to be done thoroughly, and they must address the rules and make the changes in collaboration with teams, drivers, the F1 Commission basically, changes that are needed to ensure we don't see a repeat of what happened, and not just in Abu Dhabi, by the way. There were some very questionable and inconsistent decisions made over the course of the whole season. I feel like we've said this a million times since the start of this channel. There needs to be more consistency, and some of these grey areas that are open to interpretation, or I don't know, are there to cover the backsides of those at the top, must be closed off. Because some of the things that happened in 2021 that went for one driver could easily go against them in the future. This isn't now about Hamilton and Verstappen. This is about the integrity of the sport and trying to rebuild the trust between the FIA and most of the drivers, most of the teams, and most of the fans. They've got to do better. That is it then for this one and for my end of season roundups, but you can, as always, let me know how you think Red Bull, Mercedes and their drivers got on in 2021 in the comment section down below. And I know most of you will, but for those who tend not to or seem to go out of their way not to, try and keep it respectful in the comments, because I'm not tolerating the toxic crap we've gone through in 2021, in 2022 as well. All I'm asking is just don't be a dick, and I don't think that's a big thing to ask. Anyway, I will be back soon with some more content as always, but in the meantime, if you did enjoy this one, then please do leave a like, as it really does help out the channel, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future videos. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean, this has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.